Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, what if your company culture is killing your team and you don't even know it? Today, I'm joined by Margaret Graziano, a leadership expert who has helped fix some of the most toxic workplaces. We sat down to discuss what a real culture looks like, why most companies fake it, and how to build a team that actually works together. Now, if you've ever felt stuck in a bad, fake, or toxic culture, and you want to make a shift, you don't want to miss this important conversation. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started. Today, I'm joined by Margaret Graziano. Margaret has spent her life reinventing herself. She has gone from being a single mother at 19, working at the first cable TV company, to leading one of the fastest growing consultancies and becoming a best selling author. Margaret has continually taken on challenges and learned to move beyond her limits to live a life that inspires and contributes. Using a unique combination of experimental coaching, science backed development tools, and actionable strategies, Margaret empowers leaders to evolve and improve their organizational cultures to meet today's challenges. She is the author of Ignite Culture, Empowering and Leading a Healthy, High Performance Organization from the Inside Out. And I am excited to have her on the show to better understand how leaders can ignite their culture. So, Margaret, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, John.
It's great. I'm excited to have you on the show. Excited to talk about culture. It's one of my favorite topics, and I think it's one that's really important as it relates to leadership. But first of all, how did you get interested in the idea of organizational culture?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I was in recruiting for 25 years, and in those 25 years, I learned firsthand why people take jobs, why people quit jobs, and why people stay in jobs.
Hmm.
Everybody wanted A players, and we weren't always putting A players in A companies. As a matter of fact, most times organizations, I mean, obviously, I had some really great clients. I would say 25% to 30% of all the clients I worked with were places I myself would go work for. But the other side, on the other side of the fraction, were places that weren't the best companies once you got to know them.
Hmm.
Their culture that they liked wasn't the culture that outsiders would want to be in. So, they say anything to get a person to take the job. They don't tell the truth about what's really going on inside and how dysfunctional it really is. And so I was at a midlife, I think I was like midlife. I had an offer to sell, and I was also, I had developed a recruiting process. At the time, we called it conscious hiring. And I had an opportunity to sell, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to take all the things I love about recruiting and search, all the part of working with people and finding out what's really important to them. And then I'm going to take everything I learned about employee retention because I was at the National Association, I was the trainer for the certification and retention. And I'm going to look at how I can empower healthy organizations to spread the good news about what's working and to attract like-minded individuals. And we do that. And we've also gotten entangled with organizations that aren't so healthy, and want to say they have a good culture or want to work on culture because it looks good to the board or to the shareholders. But when it comes right down to it, the culture that they're committed to is cutthroat.
Hmm.
The culture that they're committed to is divisiveness. The culture that they're committed to is anything for a buck. Not everybody, but there are those companies out there. And as you know, because of what you do in coaching leaders, and like I coach leaders, most people who are aware and awake want to work for a healthy, intentional, high performance team.
Hmm.
Most people do not want to go to work and have to fight their way through a day.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I do it.
Interesting.
My why is I I believe that people have everything inside them to be liberated and to choose where they work wisely.
Hmm.
And organizations have everything inside of them to choose the right people so that they can be the kind of organization that people can thrive at. And
I-
you've got to
yeah.
be good at sorting.
Yeah, yeah. I really love what you're saying there. And I think, coming from a recruitment standpoint or recruiting standpoint, you got to see sort of the difference between what people said their culture was like and then what it was actually like. And I
Yeah.
know my last corporate job was that situation where I went to a place where I really had a lot of respect for and I really was excited to go to work for it. And I was there, and I only lasted 2.5 years because it was the culture was so terrible that I said I have to get out of here, and that's when I started my own company. I left and started my own company. I just said I'm done with corporate life. I can't do it anymore. I can't live. I can't go to work at a place where I just can't stand being around the type of attitude and approach to people that I saw in my last corporate job. So
And
yeah.
that's everywhere. That
Hmm.
it really is. There are some good places, but I would say 20% of the organizations out there are honestly honest
Yeah.
and straight about who they are and willing to get better.
Hmm.
And then there's about 40% who are in the dark about who they are, clueless, unconscious. Money is running the show. They're churn and burn. They're coin operated. And they're not necessarily nasty, but they wouldn't know nasty if it hit them in the head. It's just the way they're used to being.
Hmm.
And then there's about, and I don't know if my math is going to work out, so that would be 40 and 60. So, and then I do think there's about 40% of the organizations that are pretty darn toxic.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what we saw way back in, in recruiting. And so if your listeners are, well, how do I pick a good, healthy culture? Talk to people who've left there.
Hmm. Yeah.
Find out why they left. There's a lot of aggressive, defensive cultures where the aggressors, and maybe they're making money, maybe they're the salespeople, and you've got aggressive, and they've won. They become super successful by being aggressive, defensive. And then you have passive. So people who want to stay out of those people's crosshairs. So what you get is this polarization. And you get people who are hiding out and in fear. And then you get people who are more and more aggressive because the people are hiding out and in fear. And if you have a leader who's awake and aware and they understand behavior and they understand healthy behavior, they can start to look at themselves and say, where am I perpetuating this divisiveness? Where am I allowing toxic behavior? Where have I stepped over? I mean, there are companies where people can do a coup inside the company and get rid of the good leaders because they don't want to follow the rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they win because they're making the money.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely. I've seen that happen as well too. At 22 years in corporate, I saw some interesting things that made my head. You kind of wonder. We're getting rid of great people because they don't fit. Well, the people in charge are allowed to do that. So get us on a level playing field here. What is how would you define organizational culture? Because sometimes that can be a slippery term, but in
yeah, good.
the way you
So
look at organizational culture, how would you define it?
yeah, so I haven't been home in a month, but I had a little thing on my it's always interesting having someone stay in the house. They make it their own, and you come back and you're like, where's my stuff? So I define organizational culture through this model. And it is the what is our cause? If our cause is about money, that's not a cause. That's like we're brass tacks, black and white. We're here to make money, and everybody is a pawn in our chess game. So culture is a human system. It's how the human system works to deliver on an ultimate intent of an enterprise. Now, don't get me wrong, every company has to make money. If they're not making money, it's a hobby. But culture is how the human system interacts and delivers on the promise. So there's culture is the environment, it's the architecture, and it's the intent, and how those three chords, you're a sailor, the rope on a boat, that what do they call it?
Like the mooring line.
The
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah.
The lines are made of three, and they're spun together, and that's how they stay strong. So you've got the intent. What are we up to? What are we for? If an organization has a what are we for, they are more likely to have a healthy human system. If their only for is we want to make money and kill the competition, that is bound to lead to death by 1,000 cuts, even for the people doing the cutting.
Hmm.
And so then let's talk about the environment. How do you have a human system that is respectful to each other? Should I go as far as to say kind, compassionate? It doesn't mean you let people not do their job. Sometimes kindness is holding someone accountable and letting them go and saying, "Wow, we're not really a fit because you're not producing. You don't get it, you don't want it, and you don't have the capacity to do it." So it's an environment where people work together, like the boys in the boat. If you've ever, any sporting movie that's been any good and that people loved, I mean, we've got Miracle, we've got Remember the Titans, you've got the boys in the boat. You saw the way they worked together. They fought through the toughness, and they said what they needed to say, but they were together.
Hmm.
And that's culture. We are rowing in the same direction. We're for a cause and we're for each other. And I work with nonprofits, and some of them are super dysfunctional when we start. And somewhere along the line, they lost their way, and someone raised the flag and said, we need to get love back into this organization because it was started out of love.
Hmm.
But sometimes human beings, when left up to their own devices, ego takes over. So, what is a healthy environment? It's an environment that you're in business, right? You're in business or in a nonprofit or in a government agency, but you're in business to produce a result, to deliver a service. How well are you delivering that service? How well are you producing that result? That's number one, or it's a hobby. Two is that people get the experience that they get to be their highest and best self at work. Not like I have to go put a mask on to go to work and pretend I'm someone I'm not, or like you said in your job where you had to grin and bear it and tolerate it and make yourself unhealthy. And you didn't say that, but you said it was really hard to be there. And when it's really hard to be someplace 70% of the time, it's unhealthy.
Hmm.
And so self-actualization doesn't mean I am, an actress in Hollywood and I get my dream job. I'm not saying that is my dream job either, but it's a lot of people's dream job. But I get to feel and experience myself as being a contribution
Hmm.
at work. So that's self-actualization. The third is affiliative. People work with people and they want to coagulate with people. They want to cooperate with people. They want to intermingle and share ideas and brainstorm and have autonomy, agency, and authority. That's self-actualization and its affiliation. And then the fourth piece to a healthy environment is that you treat people like people. If
Hmm.
you say you're going to promote somebody, then you do it, or you
Hmm.
don't make promises you can't keep. And when you do make a promise you can't keep, you clean it up and you say, I overstepped, I overpromised, I am sorry, out of respect. Or you say, you know what, I told you you were going to get a promotion, but your behavior at the last national sales conference was atrocious and I can't promote you. You need to go to rehab because you were drunk or whatever it is. But you talk to people and you're honest with people and you treat them as human beings with dignity and respect. And I have to tell you that humanistic part John, is missing in so many organizations. I was coaching a CEO. I'm no longer coaching him. He was pissed off at one of his people on the executive team and gave him the silent treatment for 2 months.
Mm,
Didn't talk to him.
yeah.
That's that's not okay. And
Yeah.
I told him it wasn't okay. I'm a tough coach. I tell people, like, if you're going to be that way, that's not. Have you read my book?
Hmm.
So the environment needs to be an environment that is fertile ground for innovation to occur. It's got to be fertile. If the environment is toxic waste, if the environment is hate and threats and screaming and finger pointing and throwing things and lying and cheating and stealing and that's not healthy. So
Yeah.
we got the environment. Now, what does it take to have a healthy environment? You need some framework for what does it mean? How do we treat each other? What are our real values? Not what do we say we are, but what are we really doing here every day? And how do we bring in new people to the organization? How do we integrate them? What are the ground rules for working here? And this is where so many companies get it wrong. They have values like respect, but they don't treat people with respect.
Mm,
They don't tell them the truth. They say, put your head down and just shut up and work. And your
yeah.
job is to annihilate the competition. Um, just even think about it. Like you got submarines on your walls. Annihilate the competition is like we're going to war. Who wants to live at work in war?
Yeah. Yeah.
So culture is how we treat people, how we listen to people, how level we are with them, how straight up we are with them, how often we communicate. And I think where most companies blow it is they think they are communicating, but we're learning you have to communicate 10 times more than you think you do.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's
So
the
I know
old
that's a
marketing adage.
long-winded
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah. Well, I think what you hit on a couple of things that I wanted to touch on, and one is like my experience on the submarine is that we all knew what the mission was, like, and we wanted to be there, and we were there for each other. And so we were part of a really, like, it's sort of the boys in the boat you mentioned. We were like that environment. We had a goal, we had a mission, do this mission, get everyone home safely, and everybody knew what their role was in carrying that mission, and we were there for each other. We had each other's backs. And so when I came to corporate, so I came from that environment, I came to corporate, and the mission wasn't clear. And like, why are we here? Why does this company exist? Well, you'd hear one guy would say, it's about making money. It's about taking care of our customers. It's about reducing our inventory. It's about reducing scrap. I remember as a young one, just my beginning, days in corporate, I'm like, I don't even know what the mission is. And you had people running in different directions and no one really in a cohesive way
Mm.
moving in one direction. And so
Yeah, so
that,
you're describing friction
yeah, so very
at all
frictional.
levels.
Yeah, very high levels of friction. And so, and we weren't clear on that. And I think that's probably where I began. So when I got a chance to run my first plant, the idea of like the try, all I kept thinking about was to build an organization like we had on the ship, where we knew what the mission is, and everybody was critical to achieving that mission. And everybody knew what their role was in achieving that mission. And everyone, whenever I take over an organization, I list my expectations. And number one, it's funny you say that, is I say treat people with respect. Number one on my list always, because you start there, things get a lot easier, right?
Mhm.
So I love that you point that out as sort of one of the key aspects of building a good culture, is this idea of the humanistic side of it, treating people with respect.
But I will say that so many companies say they do that.
Yeah.
When the leader is triggered, this is for all
Yeah.
you leaders listening. When the leader, and then I'm sick and tired of people saying, I'm triggered, you're triggering me. But that's in our nomenclature now. But when the leader is being led by their ego, by their insecurity, by their fear, when the leader is being led, the brain won't let us even be respectful.
Hmm.
We go into fight, flight, freeze, or faint, and we are operating at our lowest brain, which is I need to kill something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And most people don't know, like I told you earlier, the 40% they don't know, and they don't even know that they don't know that they're blind to when they're in survival mode. And so they
Yes.
might have
Yes.
respect is our core value until we're losing a customer, or until we had a bad month, or until you said something I didn't like at the sales conference, or until you challenged my expense budget, or
Yeah.
until you told me I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And so that's the key. It's how do you handle disagreements? How do you handle what do you do? If I'm interviewing for a job, or bringing a new leader on, how do I, how do you, company, handle when two executives disagree?
Mm.
What's the process for reconciliation? Or what happens when you make a big mistake and someone's got to own it? How does your company deal with that? We want to know how people are at our worst. Just like before you get married, you'd want to know that, right?
Yeah.
You don't just want to be surprised one day when somebody goes psycho on you.
Right. Right. Well, one of the things that you're implying through this, and I think it's really important, is it's one thing to, make a list of your, cultural values, if you will, but that's not as important as how you actually your actual actions. And so, to me, sort of what makes up the culture is the actions of the leaders, and what they do, like you say, when the chips are down, or when you're facing, some sort of a negative situation. Do you act in accordance with your stated values, or does that go out the window? And if it does go out the window, well, that's really truly your culture. It's not what's on paper, it's how you
Well, and
behave,
and here's the thing. Everyone's human. I mean, when I was younger and running a recruiting company, and I was straight commission and supporting my family, and I was trying to be nice to everybody. I didn't want anybody to work on commission and suffer like I had to. So I had all this overhead, and I was completely stressed out. And so I was running an organization incongruently with the way I was trained. I
mm,
was a bad boss.
mm,
I hired people who didn't want to earn commission. I hired people who weren't driven to find people jobs. They kind of wanted to be in the space I was in because it looked like everything was fun. And then when they wouldn't produce, I would hound them and hound them and hound them and hound them. And I didn't know any better. I didn't know until I was 36 years old that I was even doing that.
mm,
And so the thing is, a lot of companies just don't know, and they don't know that they don't know. But the
mm,
question is, are they willing to pull the bag off their head and say, wow, the feedback I'm getting in my 360 is that when the chips are down, I'm not very nice, or that I tell people the job is one thing, but it's really another thing, or that I don't give people the bad feedback. I get just as much, I see just as much conflicting cultures from people who are too nice, not holding people accountable. And like, even they want to be respectful, but they're not being respectful because they're not telling people that they're not performing, but they're talking about them behind their back to everybody else.
mm,
So it's really in this respect thing is insidious. And
mm,
it's like, so if you're going to say respect is our culture, what does that mean?
mm,
What does that really mean? It means we don't yell, like Microsoft. We don't yell. There's no nonviolent community. We're all about nonviolent communication. That's how Microsoft is now, but at one point they were very violent communication.
right, right,
They also say that accountability is one of their core values. So if you want to work at Microsoft, you've got to be ready and willing to produce. And if you don't, you got to leave.
right, right.
And so I just think values are slippery, and we don't do enough to define them and to teach people what it means here. And we slide over it in the interview process and say, oh, yeah, look at our values on the wall. And the applicants need a job.
Mm, yeah, 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 exactly. Well, you touched on one thing, and I wanted to get some clarification on it. You mentioned a culture being one of friction, and then you also talk about the idea of a culture being more of a flow.
Mm,
Explain the difference between the two states, and then how do we make that shift happen? What's the, what's
great.
what's the
Great.
necessary condition to be able to make that shift?
So friction, imagine a lot of noise, like 140,000 bits of information coming at you, and it's incoherent. It's
Hmm.
noise, it's loud, it's all conflictive, like when you were at that company, this one running this way and that one running that way. So friction is incoherence. So imagine you're, on a submarine, and you're trying to get, SOS, SOS, and you're sure. So it's incoherent. The signal's not going out. But coherence is this state of you can hear everything that's being said, you can understand it. There's alignment. So if I'm operating as an individual and my brain, my thinker, is connected to my heart, my feeler, is connected with my second brain, my gut, I'm in alignment, I'm coherent, I'm steady, I'm stable. Now imagine if you get everybody on the team grounded and clear. Who are we? What are we for? What are our roles? Who's doing what? Is everyone clear? Where does my role end? Where does your role begin? And how often are we connecting so we're on the same page? That's flow. And when you're in a state of coherence, i.e., a state of flow, you are moving like the radio waves, you're moving in sync. And there's actually that's too bad I don't have it with me, but I've been studying heart math, which is this breathing and coherence methodology. And I actually have a monitor that I put my finger in and I breathe, and it will tell me how aligned my thoughts are and my heartbeat. And so, is the thinking and the heart rate in coherence? And when it is, I've got clarity.
Hmm.
So, we call it emergence. In an emergent culture, that's when innovation can occur. That's when people do their best. Let them do what they love to do. Now, make sure they love to do what you do, because if they don't love to do what you do, they shouldn't be there.
Hmm.
They'll
Yeah.
never feel good about it if they don't love what it is that you're up to. And if you're only up to making money, you need to go hire a bunch of people who only care about money. Don't hire service centralizers if you only care about money. But if you want to make a difference on the planet, if you want to change lives, like my company, we liberate the human spirit. If you don't want to liberate people, shouldn't work here.
Hmm.
And if you get people who are aligned and then your behavior is congruent, and then you teach them and train them and give them opportunities to thrive, what you create is this fertile environment for growth, and that's emergence.
Hmm.
And in science, like if you just Google emergence, you'll see schools of fish. You see the school swimming this way, and all of a sudden it moves. All of them move, not just one or two, but all of them move. That's emergence. At the end of a fire, a big, big fire in the forest, about a year and a half, 2 years later, the ground is fertile and everything starts growing and new life. That's emergence. And so, like, if people spend 70% of their waking life at work, they really want to be in an environment that's fertile ground for happiness,
Hmm.
for joy, for cooperation. They want to be like the boys on the boat. They want to win.
Yeah.
And they want to, when they get the ball, they want to do the best they can with that ball. They don't want to be annihilated when they get the ball.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, because I think many people have never seen a flow state or an organization culture that is in flow. And so I think
Mm,
maybe as you describe and you talk about it, it might be new to somebody. They haven't really felt it. I mean, again, I go back to my time when I was on the submarine. We would run battle stations, and we all had a certain role to do in battle stations. And we had done it so many times together in so many different, scenarios. We didn't have to communicate. We could look at each other and we knew exactly what each other was thinking. And the next step, we all had a role to play and we knew exactly how each other was thinking. And when we did torpedo shots, we never missed. We've never missed the entire time we were there because we just were like this we were in that state of flow where we just knew each other, we depended on each other, and we knew how each other was thinking. And it was just it was an amazing experience. And I think maybe probably my entire career I've been chasing that in the same way in my business life, to create a situation where I had that kind of an organizational culture that did operate that smoothly.
Yes, so I've worked with some. I would say 70% of the companies that contact me either had that at one time and lost it,
Yeah,
and or a new leader came in and said, I can't lead in this toxic environment.
mm,
We have to shift it.
yeah,
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the leader gets outgrows the organization, including the board.
yeah, yeah,
And they just they're better than the company.
yeah.
And but I think it's easier to do this in organizations where you have autonomy,
Yes,
your team. I
yes.
think smaller companies, it's easier, honestly.
100%. I agree with you.
Less than 400 people, I think it's much easier.
Yeah,
I think if the leader is emotionally healthy, the CEO, and they've done work on themselves, much more likely that you'll have that emergence because they don't let their ego run the show. I've worked with some hospitals that have it, but it's not something that you can take for granted. It's ongoing. It takes, like even you could tell your teammates thoughts, but you guys were always doing drills. You were always practicing.
yeah,
You were
yeah,
building the muscle day in and day out, day in and
yeah,
day out. So that's why you see it on sports teams and you
yeah.
see it in startups.
And yeah, and I've run, having the military background and the startup experience, that's where I've seen the startup was the closest we could get to that sort of flow state. Is because we were a small organization, everybody was on the same page, we had the same mission, everybody knew their roles, and we liked being together. We were
Yes.
sort of like on a pirate ship. We're kind of setting off. We called ourselves corporate refugees, and we were on a pirate ship, and we were going to change the world, and that's a fun place to be. And I think that that's the closest probably I ever got to where it was similar to in the military, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I think it is possible, and it's up to, you said you have a lot of leaders listening to this podcast. It's up to each and every one of us. I have something on my, now I can't find it because, oh, it is on my, I have a couple hearts on my desk, and I have a question for myself. Is my behavior inspiring or expiring positive change?
I love that.
Because sometimes I talk to people all day long and I take in their energy, and am I clean? Am I putting out the best I can? And we all need to be asking ourselves that if we want to work for a healthy, intentional, high performance organizational culture, each and every one of us has to really examine our own behavior.
I love that. I love that. Well, that's a great place to end this conversation. Is there a final message would you like to leave with our listeners?
I think I just said it,
I
but I'll
think you
say
did.
it more succinctly. Um, Take a look in the mirror.
Mm,
Are you being your best? Are you operating at your highest? Are you living the values you say you are? And if not, it's okay. Have compassion for yourself and set an intention of what you want and then go create it. The more of us that are doing good work, the more organizations will have to get better.
absolutely. Such a great point. I love it. Margaret, how can people find out more about you and the work you do?
Well, Keen Alignment is the company that I run, and margaretgraziano.com is the website for where I get speaking engagements or do talks or workshops. And so you can just look up Margaret Graziano and you'll find me.
Fantastic. We're going to put links in the show notes for all of Margaret's resources, including the book Ignite Culture. A very important book. If your culture is not ignited, if you're not in a flow state, if you're in chaos, then you've got work to do. And Margaret's book Ignite Culture is one that's going to help you. So follow the links in the show notes below. If you had something that you want to talk to Margaret about, reach out to her, ask her a question, and she's happy to answer the questions about culture. She is the expert. That's why we bring experts on the show so that you can learn from her experience, learn from her knowledge. So, Margaret, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing all of your insight on culture. You've given us a lot to think about today.
You're welcome.
Thank you again. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.